Right, I'm Angela Ellam, and I've recently completed a PhD which examined the power of the Labour Party in Kirklees Council, so it looked at political power. And using this research, I'm going to argue for the return of the traditional committee system rather than the cabinet system, which is adopted by most local authorities. And I'm going to argue the case in three parts. First, I'm going to start by examining or revisiting the reasons for replacing the traditional committee system. I will then assess the cabinet system against these reasons, and I will then consider the weaknesses of the cabinet system. So the reasons for replacing the committee system are well established and have been well written about. It was perceived to lack efficiency, accountability and transparency. It was perceived to be inefficient because councillors spent too much time in council meetings, and a lot of the committee meetings duplicated each other, wasted a lot of time, produced a lot of paper, and senior officers were having to spend a lot of time at these committees. So it was deemed to be inefficient. It was also perceived to lack transparency, and it lacked transparency because committees were not where the real decisions were actually made. Decisions were made in party groups outside of the public, so they were made in private in party group meetings, and there was deemed to be very little open democratic scrutiny of decisions that were actually made. And finally, it was perceived to lack accountability, and it was perceived to lack accountability because it was not clear to people where decisions were actually made and who was making them. So it's very difficult to know who to hold to account. And in many local authorities, few people actually knew who the leader of the local authority was or who the leader of certain committees were. So when local authorities were forced to adopt alternative systems of governance by the Local Government Act 2000, most adopted the cabinet system. But is the cabinet system any better against those criteria? In terms of efficiency, most research has demonstrated that the cabinet system of decision making, by concentrating decision making within a small group of councillors, has actually meant that decisions are made much quicker than they were under the old committee system. And the majority of councillors spend much less time in meetings of the council. So in that respect, the cabinet system is actually more efficient than the old committee system. In terms of transparency, most of the research has demonstrated, including my research, that decisions are still made in private, behind closed doors. So decisions are made in private cabinet meetings, they're made in party group meetings, and they're made by officers. They're still not made in public. And what's significant about the cabinet system is that the debate is no longer played out in public. Under the traditional committee system, at least the debate was actually played out in the committee meetings, which were in public, and in the council meeting, which was in public. This no longer happens because nobody takes a great deal of interest in the cabinet meetings. The public don't actually turn up, media doesn't turn up, and backbench councillors don't actually turn up. And the scrutiny function, which was intended to scrutinise decisions in public, doesn't actually work in local authorities. Most research has demonstrated that local authorities have actually struggled to make scrutiny effective. So in that respect, the cabinet system is no more transparent than the traditional committee system. In terms of accountability, political decisions can be made by full council, area committee, cabinet, the leader, cabinet members, officers, and deciding where those decisions are made is determined by legislation, it's determined by the constitution, it's determined at the whim of the leader, at the whim of cabinet members. So that system is no more accountable, it's not clearer who makes the decisions than under the traditional committee system. And sadly, in many local authorities, the general public still have no idea who the leader of the council is or who's actually running the council. And I know this from my experience of canvassing the streets of Huddersfield, knocking on doors and trying to convince people that the Labour Party doesn't actually run the council and hasn't done for the past 5 years. So there is, the general public just are not aware of who runs the council. So the cabinet system is no more accountable than the traditional committee system. So overall, the cabinet system is better in just one area. It is more efficient than the traditional committee system. But there is a cost to that efficiency. Decision making is far less democratic. And by this I mean fewer politicians are actually directly involved in the political decisions of the council. And you might think, well, does that matter? And actually, I think it does matter, and it matters for a number of reasons. It matters because it works against the democratic principles of local government, which implies that elected politicians should actually be involved in decision making. It matters because the checks and balances which are needed in a political system to make sure that power is not abused do not work in local government, such as scrutiny, opposition, and the political parties themselves. It matters because better decisions are more likely if it involves more people, and with a wider range of interests engaging in free and open debate. It matters because it allows the talent of all councillors to be used, and it matters because the risk of maladministration, manipulation and corruption is far greater when fewer people are involved. So to summarise, the contest really boils down to the more efficient decision making of the cabinet system on the one hand, and the more effective decision making of the committee system on the other hand. And having observed the damage caused by poor political decision making in Rotherham Council recently, I know which one I think is better, but it's up to you whether or not you agree. Thank you.